Knowing this near universal pattern helps to assess new brands and existing ones.
What don't marketers know?
Quite a lot. Marketers, I actually live in an anything-goes world where the latest fashion or fad drives an awful lot of practice.
Segmentation is the recognition you can't serve everyone with equal satisfaction.
This is the Zach Ansbury Show.
Welcome. On today's podcast clip, we have Professor Jackie Eastman of Florida Gulf Coast University, United States. So this is kind of the fun part I like to get into now. It's talking about your research. So you have an incredible research profile, many thousands, over 10,000 Google Scholar citations with a really strong H-index of 40. So the article that I'd like to talk to you about today is one that you're the first author of. It's called The Determinants of Positive Consumer Effect Towards Luxury Brands' Social Media Posts on Sustainability, a FSQCA approach. And we'll dive into what that means in a minute. And it's published in a journal mentioning impact factors, high impact factors. Journal of Business Research has a really, really high impact factor. So I read this last night. Being a parent of a newborn, I was up until midnight, and luckily he gave me a bit of time while he was sleeping in the bassinet to read this. And the first thing that really struck me was just how well written the abstract was. So I don't know if being the lead author, if that was something you had a huge hand in, but I found it really well summarized the rest of the article. What was the purpose of the article, or like the problem that was you needed to be solved? What data did you look at? What was the sample size of that data? Where was it collected? The analysis method you used, some of the results. Abstracts are supposed to be really well written, but I don't know, this is one of the better abstracts I've read in a long time. So thank you.
That I've got to credit my co-authors that I've worked with one of the authors, Hanju Shen, who's one of our AEs, that we sort of have a style where I take the first pass and I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. And then she sort of takes the next pass and fine tunes it and makes it sound so much smarter. And that, I think that would be just sort of, people early in your career, surround yourself with people smarter than you. And they will, and then if you work really hard, they will want to hang out with you. And so she's really good at that. And then we brought in Varsha because when we thought, okay, we're doing something with social media, then it's like, okay, we've got to have Varsha. She's an expert in that. And so she could add things that we wouldn't even think of from the social media aspect throughout in designing the study, designing what we're looking at. So she had an expertise because she's done so much research in social media that we hadn't done a lot. And our other author, Jinfeng Wang, at one point, Hanju, Jinfeng, and I all worked at Georgia Southern. And she was the FSQCA specialist. And so she's like, there's this method, and I think it could work in marketing. Let's do a paper together. And I go, well, I do a lot of survey research, a lot of stuff with SEM. And she's like, but if you ever run into a situation where there's no way the answer is going to be linear, you got to go this way. So Hanju and I talked about it, and we're like, we've got to think of something. And I do a lot of stuff in luxury, and I've been doing some stuff in sustainability. And then we thought, well, maybe we could look at luxury firms' posts dealing with sustainability. And then we're like, okay, well, we're doing social media, so we got to get Varsha on board. And this, project really started sort of during that whole lockdown period. And so it was, we used to sort of joke about, yes, we want to get this paper published, but just the joy of working together, that's been a reward. And I think too many times, young scholars think, I'll be happy once this gets published. Well, I don't know about you, but when something gets published, it's like, okay, what's next on the list? So you've really got to enjoy the journey and work with research teams that you get joy from working with them, because the acceptance letters are too far and few between. You've got to find joy in the day-to-day process of research. And I think that all comes down to, working with teams that, care about you as a person, that you care about them as a person. And so when you're, going through that revision, you've got a team. You've got a tribe of people with you. And so that way, when you do get those acceptance letters, you're happy, not just, oh yeah, I have an acceptance letter, but you're happy because the team got an acceptance letter. So it means all that much more. I remember when I defended my dissertation, I kept telling myself, I'll be happy once I get this dissertation done. And then I realized, I remember, standing with my soon-to-be husband after my defense, and I remember thinking, I thought I'd be a lot happier. I don't feel joy. I just feel like the removal of pain. And I thought, all this, and this is it? So then, of course, I called my mother, and then telling her I defended, then that's where I got the joy from. And, but it's, you've got to find joy in the process. Because you can, and I think sometimes when you see those people that kind of respond bitterly to reviewers, I think it's because they're miserable working on the paper. And it comes through. It comes through in the, it's not like they're writing bitter words, but you can tell a paper that an author's passionate about. And you can tell a paper where they're going through the motions.
Yes, absolutely. That's really, really strong advice. Make sure you work with the right team and topics that you care about, right? It seems like you had a happy marriage of both of those for this paper. So I don't know two of your co-authors on this one, but of course I know Varsha, because she's the deputy editor of Journal of Consumer Behavior. I've never met her in person, but yeah, via email and social media, she seems like an absolutely phenomenal person.
A woman does not sleep.
It seems that way. How is she so prolific and just like doing so much?
And I'm just like, how many hours do you sleep?
Yes.
And she's like, oh, maybe 5. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's why you're getting so much more done, because you have an extra 3 hours than the rest of us.
Yeah, I have to admit, like, it's just, my LinkedIn is like, oh my God, how are you doing so much? Very, very productive woman. So, I mean, you said some of this research originated during those lockdowns, and is that kind of what triggered the need for this research to be done? I mean, it's obviously the expertise of a combination of authors, but was it the circumstances that are happening in the world that sort of prompted this to actually begin?
Well, because there's been a lot done with environmental sustainability, but there hasn't been as much done with social sustainability. And then in the U.S., we had the whole George Floyd incident where he was arrested, and in the arrest, he died at the hands of the police officer. And so we had an event, Blackout Tuesday, in which people were saying, okay, in solidarity, make a social media post that's just pure black.
Yep.
And so then we're like, oh, now we have 2 events. You have Earth Day that happens every year. So we have an environmental sustainability event, and we have, hopefully this will only happen once in a lifetime, social sustainability event. And so we thought, okay, we can look at how luxury firms respond to these. And so we said, okay, let's look at their post the day before, the day of, the day after. And so then what we did is we wanted to look at a variety of factors. So we wanted to look at things like, did they post on that actual day, or did they post before, after, when we looked at the individual posts? We wanted to look at how many posts that luxury firm made that day. Then we wanted to look at, within the post, how comprehensive was their discussion of sustainability? So, and then this is where we sort of took the literature, took our expertise, and, with FSQCA, you sort of set you code it. So like, for example, with environmental sustainability, that if the luxury firm mentioned nothing visually or in writing about the natural environment, they got a 0. But then if they talked about, like, if they had their product, like let's say they had their purse in a field of flowers. Okay, well, we see the flowers, so they illustrate the natural environment. They're still not doing anything sustainable. Then, point 4 is they might talk about, sort of image type environmental sustainability, like, people should recycle or protect the environment, or, they have some kind of label that, they're approved of, from Greenpeace or something like that. And then, but to get sort of those higher scores, you had to really say, okay, what is your product doing to be sustainable? And then what is your process doing to be more sustainable? Yeah. And then the idea that if they talk about it in multiple ways, they would get the full score. Yeah. Then with social sustainability, if they just made a post, nothing to do with social sustainability, then that was a 0. If they purely did the black box, that got coded 0.2. If they talk about, the importance of social inclusion, of improving the community, of diversity, then it might get, a 0.4. If they talked about their specific efforts, that would get a 0.6. Then if they talked about it in terms of like fair wages and good working conditions, so really sort of how they're living it, 0.8. And then if they talked about social sustainability in multiple ways, that would get a 1. And all these we hand coded. So, and then we made sure that we had agreement between the authors. So
I was just about to ask about that. The intercoded reliability was pretty high.
It's funny, whenever I do stuff that's sort of a qualitative, people, like the reviewers, will always go, what program did you use? And I guess I'm old school. I like to hand code stuff because I feel like you really get a much more in-depth understanding. It takes a lot longer.
Yes.
But you really get a feel beyond that. Oh, I just put this in this program and it gave me this.
You don't understand the nuances otherwise.
And then we looked at, and this is where, Varsha was really instrumental, like the social media post characteristics. Okay. So, things like, was it just a picture? Was it picture and text? Was it multiple pictures with no text? Was it multiple pictures with text? Was it video with no text? And again, it was sort of scored on a 0 to 1, with the idea of being a multimedia would get a 1. Then we looked at things such as, did they use hashtags? Did they use influencers? Then we looked at message elements. Was it just conative or just cognitive or more effective or multiple aspects? And so we coded each of these. And then we wanted to look at sort of our dependent variable was, and it was based on Mandel et al.'s paper in JBR that developed the LOVE-R. And what Mandel et al. Did was they looked at, in a Facebook post, you have lots of options, like, love, smiley face, mad face, sad face, and what percentage of the things people choose was a heart. So we thought, okay, now we're going to use Instagram because for luxury firms, obviously Instagram is sort of the most natural fit. But we thought Instagram is just everything, just a heart.
Yeah.
So we needed something that showed a higher level of commitment. So then we decided on, they put a red heart emoji in the comments and then looked at it. Because first we thought, okay, we're going to, Jin Fong's like, okay, we can, download the comments and do a Python and then we can analyze it. And then we realized if you've ever looked at comments on a social media post for a firm, a lot of them are just weird. They might be done by bots. A lot of times people will try to promote their own firm in responding to the comments. Then we had the idea that because these are luxury firms, they're in multiple languages. And then sometimes we couldn't tell by the emojis what exactly they meant. Like, were they being sarcastic or are they really mad? And we thought red heart is sort of in the emoji world. That's universally accepted. You loved it. Yeah. And so that's why we picked that. And so then when we analyzed this, what we found, and we used complexity theory, is the idea that there's going to be some consumers that to get the red heart, you've got to really show, yes, we're sustainable and we're explaining in detail how we're sustainable. Other people are looking, oh, you made a lot of posts about sustainability. Or you had an influencer, or you had a good video, or more of the social media aspects. And so, we had multiple solutions in both environmental and social to what would make a red heart. And then with social sustainability, what really came out, and when you think about that time frame with Black Lives Matters, is that people were terrified of getting canceled, and what do I say? And I don't want to say the wrong thing. Is that the reliance on influencers was much stronger with the social sustainability, that they needed that influencer to sort of guide them. The use of hashtags was also more important with the social sustainability. So it was just really interesting. The one thing was that, the whole thing started, let's put the black box. But and this is where it comes from, hand coding things, okay, that really just made people mad. So when a company would put the black box in, people just were mad. They're like, well, what are you doing to make things better? How many women and people of color do you have on your board of directors? That it was just, more vitriol. And so it's really when you saw that they took the time to explain, this is what we're trying to do to improve things. And they worked with, influencers and so forth, and utilizing those social media elements and, different aspects of message elements. That's when it worked better. And then sort of finally, the interesting thing is when we looked at all these is the luxury firms didn't respond to any of them. And I know with luxury, there's this whole sort of era of, distance. And so we don't want to be too approachable. But I think in the case of sustainability, like, some of these firms were really doing a lot, like say with social sustainability. And so when you're getting called out in the comments, we know that you're doing a lot because we've seen all your posts. That they could have very easily responded. Thank you for your concern. To address things, let us tell you, or here, look at this link, or look at our bio. They could have very easily sort of calmed the waters down by providing information. And I think that was, it's one thing when you're trying to sell a fashion item, but when you're trying to sell that and we're a good company,
Yeah.
I think you need to take more of that time to really, they needed to have somebody respond.
Especially if they are allowing incorrect information to remain underneath. Yeah. Because then people are going to scroll through and be like, well, they haven't responded, so it might be true.
Yeah.
And we're all really time poor, so we're not doing our own research as to the sustainability of each company, that's for sure. You had some really cool brands that you analyzed. Like you said, it was on Instagram, and that makes a lot of sense as to why you chose that platform. But in the 2 specific days, some of the cool brands were Burberry and Tiffany, for example. You then did the analysis. So the acronym that was in the title, Fuzzy Set Qualitative Comparative Analysis. So I'm still very new at understanding that. And I think you said it was one of the recommendations from one of your co-authors. And from reading the paper, it stemmed from a systematic literature review of the method, and then said that it should be applied to certain situations, and one of them being luxury, I think, if I recall correctly.
And then the idea that it really fits with, and if someone's like, gee, I want to learn more about this. Art Woodside has written several different papers in JBR, and we've published some papers too on this, because it is sort of a, as someone that's sort of used to linear thinking, that it really was a learning experience for me to say, okay, well, we don't have one answer. We have 6 answers. And for some of the people, having a characteristic made them more likely to red-heart it, and the absence of it made them more likely to red-heart it. So it really sort of highlighted this idea that there are some people that want high-quality information. There's some that are looking at it from the social media aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that kind of what you found? Is that there is no sort of one answer for both of them?
There's one answer.
Context, and both of them had multiple answers. Sorry.
Oh, so I think for luxury firms, what this really suggests is you can't just make one kind of post.
Okay.
Because, so like if you're, in terms of sustainability, you want to have discussion of that. And then you can refer them to like a website. Like we had, the example with Prada where they sort of talked about what they did. But there's other people that, okay, that's not what they're interested in. And so you've got to appeal to both groups of people. And I think probably, we did not test this, but I think, where would you do with this next? Because fortunately or unfortunately, we don't have another big social sustainability event. So if they said, gee, collected for another social event, we haven't really, fortunately not had that. But I think if you could look at it to say, let's just look at it like, say, during the holiday shopping season. And, probably some people want to know about the craftsmanship and the history and the tradition. And other people just want to see a celebrity with that bag. And so I think you could take this study and say, okay, we looked at it in the sustainability realm. Now let's look at it in other realms of marketing luxury online.
And is that where you kind of see it moving? Is that where you're moving in this area?
Now that I'm like, we're talking about this out loud, I'm like, I need to contact these people. This is a good idea. So I like this idea. And so, because just getting ready for this, I thought, okay, because again, it's like, oh, the paper's done. Now I'm on to new projects. And so I'm working on other things with Varsha. I'm working on another luxury project with Hanju. But, now sort of when I was going back, just like you, like rereading the paper, it's like, oh yeah, we need to do something else with this. So we got to get the band back together.
That's a good phrase. I like that. Thanks for sharing that. I always love talking to people about their research, especially when the article is so interesting. And I think there's a lot to take out of it, whether you're interested in social media, whether you're interested in luxury, or whether you're interested in the different like the causes that are happening in the world. So I think there's a lot of different angles here that make your article so appealing to read from different audiences. So I don't know, maybe it's one of those ones that ends up getting highly cited and becomes an impactful article. I actually haven't checked anything to do with the stats on it, so but it is very new, so those things take a lot of time. Hi everyone, Zach here again, and just a few quick reminders before you go. If you're listening to the podcast and are considering incorporating it into your secondary school or university courses, then please let me know and I can guide you through the process. If you're enjoying the show and getting some insights from it, then please leave me a 5-star review on your podcast listening platform. It would go a long way to spreading the word. If you know someone who would benefit from this content, then I would be thrilled if you could consider sharing this episode and its knowledge with them. And finally, thank you for becoming part of the community for this show.